We're on our way to California. We stopped at Mount Shasta, and in this video we're going to be talking about housing. So there are three main options as far as housing when you're doing travel. The first one is to stay in furnished housing, and a lot of times your recruiter can help set that up with you if you want to go that option, or you can just use the stipend and look for it yourself. There's a couple of websites you could use. One of them is called Furnished Finder, or you could do Airbnb or look on Craigslist and search under furnished or temporary housing. And there are usually some options there. Be careful of Craigslist. We've heard of lots of scams. And then another option would be the unfurnished housing route, which is what we do. And we'll be talking mostly about that in this video. And I'll show you some pictures too of the types of places that we've stayed so far. And then the last main option would be using the RV or a fifth wheel or a camper or whatever. And I know a lot of people go that route, and for some people it seems to be the cheapest option to go that route versus how we do with unfurnished housing. For us, it wasn't, because we don't already have a truck or something big enough to tow that much weight, and because we don't already have a camper. But if you could get access to those fairly cheaply, or if you already have that, then it probably would be a cheaper option for you. But there's a couple different really good sites for resources for that too. So there's a couple Facebook pages. I think one of them is something like Travel Nursing Gypsy RV or something like that, so you could search that. And then we also follow another couple who does travel, and their website is Fifth Wheel PT, so look them up too. So those are some good resources. But otherwise, we'll be talking mostly about our unfurnished housing. Well, we have finished up our pit stop here at Mount Shasta, and we are getting back on the road. We have about 5.5 hours left to drive to get to our new place. So this time we have actually got a furnished place, so we'll show you what it looks like when we get there. We made it to Los Gatos and we're all moved in. So here's a quick little view. It was already furnished. So all the furniture in here was provided, and then we just unloaded our cars and got everything packed away in the last day or two here. So really nice place. Looks good. Okay, so we have a lot to cover, and so I'm going to be talking fast. So let's rewind to our very first contract and first apartment. We went the apartment search route. Just know if you do that most apartment complexes will only do a 1-year lease at the minimum. Some places will do 6 months, so it takes some work finding someone that will do either a 3-month lease or a month-to-month lease. And if apartments do that, then they usually will tack on an extra $100 to $300 to the base rent as the short-term lease fee. So what we do is just do a Google search of all the apartments around where we're going to be working, and then I look at the ones that have the best review, and I write down a list of all those. And I write just the names and phone number. And then I go through and I call each one, and my first question is, do you do a short-term lease or a 3-month lease or a month-to-month lease? If the answer is no, okay, great, thanks anyway, hang up, call the next one. If the answer is yes, then my second question is, do you have any availability for whatever date we would need it? Because that's the second problem we might run into. So as you go through your list, you might start with maybe 10 or 15 different apartment complexes and end up with maybe 2 that have availability if you're lucky. So it is doable. We actually always find an apartment doing it that way. So it sounds kind of tedious, but it really ends up being faster than going through the Google search and looking at each individual website, checking the prices, and then you end up having to call to see if they have any available apartments anyway. So that's how we do it. So of course this only really works if you're in a city where there are multiple apartment complexes to choose from. If you're in a smaller town, you may not have as many options. That's when you might want to go the Craigslist or Airbnb route. Be careful of Craigslist. We hear of tons of scams, so just make sure you do your investigation work and make sure that it's legit before you send any money over. If you're really having a lot of trouble finding housing, then the facility might have some tips for you based on other travelers that they've had in the past, so you could always ask them. Now if you do Airbnb, then obviously it's going to be more expensive because it's fully furnished. So for us personally, that's the only reason why we don't do that, is so that we can save a little bit of money and put more money down on student loans. Okay, so back to apartment 1, on contract 1. Again, we were trying to save as much money as we could for student loans, so we got like a very cheap apartment for our first contract, and I honestly don't have very many pictures of that to show you, well, any pictures of that to show you, because it wasn't really worth remembering, and we don't really want to, but we did catch a glimpse of that apartment in the first video as we were showing, just unpacking and moving in. But after that, for our second contract, still in Indianapolis, we upgraded to an apartment that was closer to downtown. So obviously it was more expensive and it was a much nicer apartment anyway. We got lucky because it was still under construction, and so we were able to get a lower rent price than what it otherwise would have been. But trust me, it was money well spent to upgrade. So around that area, our rent price went from around $700 or $800 to around, I think, $1,100, and both of those are including the short-term fee. Then for contract 3, we traveled to Washington, and we were expecting a significant increase in rent price there because the cost of living is much higher, which is definitely something that you're going to want to look into before you take a contract. Make sure that the pay that you're going to be getting is going to offset the differences in cost of living. We ended up finding an apartment there. It was actually a 2-bedroom, like 2-story apartment. Why 2 bedrooms? Because it was the only one available that we could find. And so then after that we went to California. So now we've come full circle back to where we started at the beginning of this video. Sort of. Because it turns out that making these videos is actually really hard and really time consuming. So we're actually in another apartment now. We've moved out of that little studio that you just saw. And now we are in a different apartment in Santa Clara, aka the Bay Area, aka the most expensive place to live in the United States. Luckily, like I said, the pay offsets it enough to where it's at least equal, like the ratio is equal to what you would get elsewhere. So this apartment is a close second as far as favorites, because look at this courtyard. It's a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom, and in this area, this is a whopping $23.95 a month. So it's pretty pricey here. Be careful of that if you are planning to come to the Bay Area. The pros to furnished housing are pretty obvious. Everything's already there that you need. You don't have to pack up and move everything. You can just walk in and be moved in. You will probably have Wi-Fi and cable and all the extra trimmings. We personally are okay with our minimalistic lifestyle, so we don't really miss any of those things. And then obviously the cons to a furnished housing is that it's more expensive. So if you're going to be a solo traveler, you could do all of this much cheaper if you are willing to rent a place or rent a bedroom in somebody's house. And in fact, a lot of the travelers that we know do that. Pros are definitely that you have company. So as a traveler, it can get kind of lonely, especially I'm sure if you're traveling by yourself. So having somebody there might be kind of nice. It's cheaper, and they should already have everything there in the house that you would need. So we have looked into the fifth wheel and RV lifestyle several times. It has enticed us here and there, and Nick has always ended up crunching the numbers and doing a spreadsheet and deciding that it's just not worth it money-wise for us. Like it wouldn't equal out. So we're definitely not experts on that. We don't know the ins and outs, but the Hobo Health PT and the fifth wheel PT that I mentioned earlier, they would have tons of information for you if you're interested in that. So the pros of an RV would be that you could have a pet. It's a lot harder to also find apartments that accept pets along with short-term housing or short-term leases and availability when you need it. And it's your stuff, it's your home. You don't have to worry about stepping on someone else's toes while you're being there. You don't have neighbors right on the other side of your wall, so all that is nice. The cons are that you may not be able to find an RV park close to your assignment, potentially, or they may not have availability there, just like with an apartment complex. And that miscellaneous cost can really add up, and so it's not just your home, but it's also your transportation to your next contract. So if something goes wrong there, then it could delay you from getting to your next contract as well. So, like I said, check out those other websites. So thanks for sticking in there with me for this longer video. I know there's a lot to cover, and honestly we've only talked about a fraction of it. So maybe we'll make another extended video sometime in the future. But thanks for all of our new subscribers, and Happy New Year, and God bless!